Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. Designed for more than just therapists, if you're a helping professional in any way, diversity in clinical practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve. And it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. And if you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. Today, it's been viewed over 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself, and if you're encouraged by it as well, share it with a friend. And whether it be through my one on one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author or speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today, I want to share with you an encouraging perspective on the dangers of executive bias. So, no matter what side of the political spectrum you may consider yourself to be, we're all learning one day at a time what to expect over the next 4 years as this country's new leader continues to make his presence known in his new term. On one hand, we know that there are many behind closed doors meetings and decisions that he's responsible for making on a daily basis, where at best we can hope that wisdom is being utilized in consideration for every citizen impacted by those decisions. However, on the other hand, we have the opportunity to get a brief glimpse into the perspective that influences those decision making efforts when he shares his perspective with the world in press conferences on a variety of topics. Following the recent devastating news of a plane crash that took several lives, the president was asked his thoughts. Unfortunately, he used this opportunity of sadness and mourning of the lives lost to place blame at the feet of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Confused by this unexpected response, the reporter asked a clarifying question, inquiring as to how the president could possibly come to such a conclusion that DEI, of all things, was the reason for the crash, despite the fact that an investigation looking to identify and analyze actual factual evidence was far from being concluded. To which the president simply responded, because he has common sense. And that's where the problem arose. For it's one thing to consider a variety of possibilities, some optimistic, with some not so flattering implications, and even having a leaning as to what you might guess might be the likely reality. That's both common and almost unavoidable. However, it's another thing completely to not only declare that one's inclinations are fact, but also to use one's position of authority and influence to encourage others to do the same. That's not only problematic, it's also potentially dangerous. If you have a moment, I'd like to share a few considerations regarding how it's dangerous, as well as a healthier way to respond. The first consideration is this: it's important to recognize that in many ways, bias is inevitable. A basic dictionary definition of bias explains that bias is merely a particular tendency or inclination, especially when it prevents unprejudiced consideration or partiality. Based on this definition, it's perfectly reasonable for all of us to be biased at some or many points in our lives, as well as have inclinations and circumstances that we feel more or less comfortable based on past experiences, witnessed experiences, and other learned life lessons. Similarly, we can be biased in favor of something, or we can be biased against something. Thus, the question is not whether or not we have biases at all, but what we do with our biases. If we're unaware of our biases, which is where we get the term unconscious bias, then it has the ability to influence our perspectives, our decisions, and our relationships with others in powerful ways. If, in contrast, we're intentionally becoming more and more aware of our biases, also known as conscious bias, learning to acknowledge our inclinations and intentionally exploring what contributes to them, then we can choose to take steps to reduce the impact those biases have on our lives. Which leads to consideration number two. Many, while biases can influence our lives, many of us may have a difficulty having to resist the dictation of those actions on our lives. While biases develop at times indirectly and at other times more directly, When we let our biases dictate our actions, it can not only contribute to our treating others in certain ways based on factors they did not earn, but it can cause us to defend our perspective despite its negative impact based on the feeling of being unjustifiably attacked. Consider the conclusion of this most recent tragic plane crash with the accusation of it being based on DEI. The belief here is likely that while an investigation into the unknown, in search of unknown facts and evidence contributing to the causes of the accident yet to be found, what is already known is sufficiently uncomfortable for many, and thus reason enough for them to go beyond cautious suspicion to outright blame. To them, that known factor is that the qualified professionals, having earned their right to hold a variety of positions of influence based on merit that was unfortunately only seen and acknowledged due to encouragement from diversity, equity, inclusion efforts, do not look like or come from the same background as him and the people who look like him or who come from similar places that he feels more comfortable with. And this is often the case by many in leadership positions. This, in and of itself, is a situation where a bias for the same against anything other than that same, anything different, contributes to the belief that the same is better than the different. Again, not based on any facts to confirm such. Not only that, but the practice is so common that to defend it, justify it, or explain it seems foolish. Why would I do that? Many would say, because it's common sense. To him and many like him, the need to have to justify or explain common sense is the real problem with what's wrong in America today. Now, let me reiterate, he's not the only one who feels this way. For him, and there are many others like him, there are likely a lot of experiential reasons that support this biased belief. And for many others, there are frequent experiences that contribute to biased feelings. All that being said, just because people have experiences that contribute to biases doesn't make the biases true or accurate. However, with no judgment for the conclusions that are drawn from past experiences, when facts are presented that contradict skewed biased perspectives, what we do next says a lot about that person. Do you hear the contradictory facts and thus begin a short or long journey to changing one's biased inclinations based on new facts, information, or experiences? Or do you dismiss the new experiences and choose to hold strong to skewed biases despite new experiences, showing them to be misguided perceptions rather than truth? Not only that, but in an ideal world, the benefit of correcting past perceptions pales in comparison to learning from that correction in such a way as to be resilient against the impact of future biased perspectives and opportunities. Which leads to consideration number three. Leaders have a responsibility to lead with wisdom, not bias. Considering the reality that we all have the challenge of navigating biases in daily life and reducing the impact they have on our decisions, especially in light of the impact of these biases that they can have on others, leaders in particular have an added challenge and responsibility. You see, leaders must be even more intentional about reducing the impact of negative biases on their decisions because they have the ability to influence more than most. They influence not only those whom they directly lead, but also all of those who look up to them as a model for how they should live their lives, including how they should treat others. When leaders let biases dictate their lives, they have the opportunity and the ability to put power and action behind those biases. Their biases can get people investigated, being deemed guilty until proven innocent, potentially even fired, impacting their ability to care for themselves and their families. Biases from leaders can even get people hurt or killed as it encourages people to feel the need to protect themselves from those who are not actual threats, but are perceived to be, despite facts to the contrary. And many have been known to harm others and defend their actions, saying that they felt compelled to harm first, to protect themselves from harm that they deemed to be inevitably coming. The scary part is that if they follow executive leadership, they might respond to calls for proof of this inevitable harm by saying that proof is unnecessary. They were just using common sense. It's sad reality these days that common sense has been perverted to justify negative and harmful biases these days. When tragedies like plane crashes, bridge collapses, and wildfires present opportunities to bring communities together to protect lives and meet a variety of needs, many use these tragedies as opportunities to unnecessarily cause more division. Instead, we have the All have the right to be treated with respect and dignity and to receive empathy and support in difficult times without being presumed to be the cause of every problem just because of skewed biases based on arbitrary differences. With all of this in mind, my hope for you is that you would make intentional efforts to identify any biases you have. Don't waste time judging yourself for having inclinations for or against anything, but instead explore what contributed to them. Reduce the likelihood that they'll dictate negative interactions between you and others in the future. And if you're in a position of leadership in any way, remember that your efforts will not only impact you and those whom you lead directly, but also anyone whom they encounter who you might follow for whatever precedent you might set. Biases may be inevitable in many ways, but the impact we have on others is up to us. I encourage you to be intentional about treating others based on who they show you they are, rather than the preconceived feelings we may have about people like them before they've even had a chance to show you who they really are. And if they do show you who they are, I challenge you to make room in your mind for something new and believe them. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening to the Diversity Do podcast. If you have any pressing diversity-related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame-free and empowering guest speaker or a training on this often difficult topic, then feel free to reach out to me directly at www.diversitymadesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who could benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often sensitive and difficult topic, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged as well, or share with them my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. And don't forget to visit TED.com and check out my talk on what to do when you offend someone. I hope it inspires you and that you can share with someone else so that they can be inspired as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast-quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
When you saw an opportunity, you built a business around it. And every day since, you've kept a sharp eye on ways to evolve and keep your business thriving. It takes courage, creativity, and a clear perspective. At Bremer Bank, we understand that your business is the result of your hard work and ingenuity, and we're here to support you with solutions when you spot an opportunity to grow. Work with Bremer Bank, because understanding is everything.